Well, hello everybody, welcome to Coding 101. My name is Scootler. In today's video, I am going to be showing you how to create your very own Wordle game. Now, if you don't know much about Wordle, then maybe you might probably be living under a rock because since I believe it was 2021, it has been one of the most popular online games around. So if you don't know much about it, that's okay. I will explain to you what Wordle is. So Wordle is a daily game that was created by a software developer or engineer called Josh Wardle, and Wardle has something of a reputation for creating interesting social experiments. So now every day people of the internet are greeted with a fresh word puzzle that can only be solved or not using a series of process of elimination clues. So it works like this. When you visit the Wordle website on the New York Times, you can go to nytimes.com /games/Wordle/index.html. So that's a long link. But yeah, so when you visit the website, you're greeted by 5 wide by 6 long grid of empty white boxes. Each box can hold one letter. So you guess at the answer by typing in a 5-letter word and then pressing enter. There aren't enough clues up front, so any 5-letter word will do as an initial guess. That's where the game of Wordles really starts. When you send a guess along, the color of each letter's box changes. If it turns green, that letter is in the daily word, and you've placed it in the right spot. So it turns green if the letter is in the daily word, and you've placed it in the right spot. It turns yellow if the letter is in the word, but you have placed it in the wrong position, and it turns gray to signify that the letter is not in the word at all. So there's a simple explanation. The website serves up a simple explainer graphic for first-time visitors that lays it all out clearly. So if you're not familiar with this game, I think I'm going to provide a link. If I remember, I'm going to provide a link of how the game, you can test out the game, or you can just go to the New York Times page and test out the game. And there's also a demo that practically shows you how the game was created. Like I said, it has been available since October 2021, and it's one of the most popular games around. So what we're going to be doing today is that we're going to be creating a simplified clone on how to use the Wordle game. Now, we're not going to create it as a whole, but we're going to create just like a simple version of the Wordle game. So some developers out there, don't get mad at me if I don't implement it completely. What we care about is just the logic and how it works. You can improve it. I'm going to provide a repository of the game in the description box, and you can just like improve on what I've already done and make it a bit more interesting for yourself as well. So that is a Wordle in a nutshell. So what we're going to do is that we're going to implement this game, and we're going to be using React.js, and we're going to also be using Tailwind Css to implement this game. Now, if you're not familiar with Tailwind Css, in the last video that I did, I created a card game using Tailwind CSS, and in that video I give an in-depth description of what Tailwind CSS is and how you can add it to your React application. But nonetheless, you can go to the tailwindcss.com or the Tailwind CSS website, and they will give you a guideline, literally instruction over instruction, on how to insert or inject Tailwind CSS into your React application. So this is a very comprehensive documentation website that will show you how Tailwind works and how you can implement it in your React application website. Or you can just simply go to my card game video and watch for the part where I explain the Tailwind. It's pretty much at the beginning where I just explain what Tailwind CSS is and how you can put it in your React application. In this video, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to hit the ground running. I've already created a boilerplate React.js application, and I just want to get started on working on this Wordle game. So make sure that you just check out my previous video or go to the Tailwind CSS website. But do check out my video though. It's a pretty interesting video. It's a pretty interesting game as well. So before we get started, I do want to remind you to subscribe to the channel. Remember to subscribe to the channel, and remember to like this video. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, like I always say, make sure that you drop those in the comment section. I'd be happy to answer any questions or heed to any comments and all that kind of stuff. So please make sure that you subscribe, make sure that you like the video, make sure if you have any comments, leave them in the comment section. I'll be happy to answer all your questions. All right, so let's get started with our application. Like I always say, when it comes to a React application, you need to break it down into components. So you can see that there are a lot of components that we have over here. So at first we have this grid-like structure that we see over here. No, we have this header, so we're not going to concern ourselves ourselves with the hamburger menu or whatever is in here. We just want the title. So our title is just going to be a simplistic h1 tag with the logo Wordle on it. And after that, we have this grid-like manner. I believe it's a 5x6 grid. So you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares, and it has about 6 rows. So we have this structure, this grid that you see over here, and then inside of this grid you have like these multiple rows that you see over here, and then you have this individual tile that you see over here that is part of the grid. So I'm already seeing like about 3 components in there. First you have the grid, and then you have the row, and then you have the tile itself. And if we go over here, then we have this keyboard feature that you see over here. Apart from the keys that you see, the QWERTY keys that you're seeing over here, we have this enter button, and then we have this backspace button. So those ones, they stand out from the rest because of their size and how they just created or how they're designed. So I'm seeing about 3 components here, or at least 2 components, because these big buttons over here are practically the same thing. So yeah, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to go to our index, we're going to go to our project, and we're just going to come over here on the SRC, and we're going to create a folder called components. And then we're going to create, first I think we should maybe create a folder so that we can separate the grid from the keyboard. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to say grid, and then we're going to create another folder. I'm going to call it the keyboard. All right, so just like that, we've managed to separate it. But I also want to create a file within components, and I'm going to call it the Wordle board JS. So the Wordle board is just going to encapsulate everything from the grid and the keyboard. So it's more like a container element. I'm going to say RCF. Okay, that doesn't seem to be working. I think I have a clue of why this is not working. So let's just go to our extension. I'm going to say ES7, and we're just going to simply reinstall it because it has a tendency of acting up. So I'm just going to install it afresh so that we can get those shortcut codes that really helps our coding time in half, or maybe not in half. So we're going to go back to our thingy. I'm going to say RCF. There you go. It works properly. What would we do without that extension? If you're not familiar with some of these extensions, just go to, I have a video that talks about some of the most important extensions that you as a developer really need to know. So check out that video. So we're going to come over here first to our grid folder, and we're going to create, first of all, we want the tile, and then we want to create a row. So we're going to say row.js. And then after that, what else do we need to create? And then we're going to say grid. Right. So then we're just going to create some boilerplate code for all of those components. All right. So the first thing that we're going to start with, of course, is the tile, because it is the basic unit of that grid. So the first thing that we're going to do is that we're going to create a state. We're going to the letter that is contained inside of that tile. So let's assume that that letter is going to be something like B, maybe K. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to say const completed, because like what we're trying to do is that once something is complete. Okay, so we're going to create a completed state to just mark that that tile has already been used. It's already filled up. You don't have to use it again. So we're going to call it completed. I'm sure we can call it something else, but I'm going to call it completed for now. And the initial state of this is going to be, is it going to be true? It's going to be, let's just say true. It's been completed, and we're gonna come over here and we're gonna create the colors that are associated with that tile. So this one is going to be an object because we need the font color and the background color as well. So I'm going to just say set colors is equals to use state the default color, as you can already notice, that the font, the background is white and the font is black. So that is like the default color that we currently have for our tiles or for our cells. And then after that, I think we're good. I think we're perfect now. And now we go to like maybe creating the tile itself. So we're going to give it, it's going to be a simplistic tile to create. I'm going to create a p tag over here. Just make sure that this is out. I'm going to create a p tag over here, and we're going to give it a couple of Tailwind CSS attributes. So once again, if you're not familiar with Tailwind CSS, please do make sure that you check out my video on creating that card game. I'm not going to spend too much time on the Tailwind CSS classes. And then over here, I'm going to put the letter inside. Now our tile needs to have maybe like a border itself. There needs to be a border inside of there. It also needs to be structured in a certain way. So what I want to do is that I want to give it a border. I want to place it in the center, and I want to make it a flex item. So that's what I'm going to do with my Tailwind CSS properties. And I'm going to give it a separate styling because like I'm going to do React inline styling, and the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to add some JavaScript into it. So of course I'm going to say the first background color, but I'm going to actually describe it here. I'm going to say const style is equals to background colors.back, and then I should be saying background color. And then I'm going to say colors.font. So these are the React inline styles that we're going to use over here. So let me just say style. So yeah, I wanted to, this is why I wanted it separately, because I wanted to add some JavaScript into it. I'm not yet familiar with adding like JavaScript to Tailwind CSS for, class names. So for now, I'm going to just use React inline styling so that I can just like manipulate those colors with the state. So yeah, that's practically it for our tiles, except we want to implement a way to like change the colors, but that would need for us to know the guess word and the word that is needed before we can get into that aspect of our programming. So we just need to know the word that is being guessed and the word that you as the user has guessed. So for now, that is it for our tiles. We'll come back to our tile. Now we'll go back to the row aspect of things, and we're going to create about I believe is it 5 or 6 rows? I want to believe it's 6 rows. So we're just going to come over here and we're going to just say we're going to create an array of numbers, and each of these number is going to represent our rows. Maybe we should start at 0, 1, 2. I think I'm going to start at 1, 5, 6. All right. So because there are about 6 rows, I want to presume we can like go back to the New York Times website. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there are about 6 rows in there. And inside, I'm just going to create actually, you know what? This is actually 5. Actually, you know what? I think I might have made a bit of a mistake. So here we're actually describing a singular row, how to create a single row. So for example, let's go to the New York Times website. We're trying to describe this aspect over here alone, how we're going to implement this section. So over here, you can see that each row, a single row, has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tiles inside of it. It has like those 5 square boxes that you see inside of it. So actually, our nums array is supposed to be 1 to 5. And so what we're now trying to do is that we're trying to implement that row, and we're going to use map in order to do that. We're just going to say nums.map. I'm going to say item index, and then we're going to just say we're going to use our tiles because we're trying to place those tiles in a single row. We're going to just say tile like that, and we're going to give it a few props that we're going to need later on. First, it's the row ID. So this is going to be, where do we get the row ID? The row ID is also coming from the props that we're going to insert inside of it. Yeah, because we don't know, because there are many rows inside of here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we need to understand which row we are actually dealing with, or which row this tile exists in. Is it in this first row? Is it in the second row? Is it in the third row? So that is why we are giving it that prop, we're giving it that row ID, and that ID needs to come from the grid. So that is why this is going to be props.id. I'm going to say key is equals to index so that React doesn't complain. I'm going to give it an ID of index as well. All right. So I feel like that is okay. But apart from that, we actually want these tiles to be in a row-like manner, and we want them to be flex items. We want to justify them to the center. And in order to do that, we're going to use our CSS styles as well. We're going to come over here, and I'm going to put these CSS attributes in there. And I feel like that should be fine, but I'm getting a red. Oh, it's because of the div over here. So just like that, we've managed to do our row. So actually, I think by now we might actually want to see what we've actually implemented. So I don't know if it's the right time to do it though, but yeah, let's try and see what we've managed to do. So I'm going to just come to our app.js. I'm going to get rid of everything that is inside our app.js, and I'm going to put in the row inside of there. And we're going to just go to our project and see what we've implemented thus far. We have a few errors inside of there, so let's see what we can deal with. Okay, no, actually that's just one error, which is emanating from the row file. It's complaining because we haven't put the props the argument at the very top. So let's see. This is exactly what we wanted. You can see that now we've created a row that has about 5 tiles inside of it. So we've successfully implemented the tile, and we've also implemented the row accordingly. Excellent. So now where we go from here is we go to the grid, and we're going to try and implement the grid as well. So the first thing that we need to start with, of course, just like we did with the numbers, we're going to just say const the rows, row numbers, so something like that. So how many rows do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. As you can see from the New York Times website. Let's go there. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we need to implement 6 rows together. By the way, you can use CSS Grid to do this, but I find it much easier doing it this way. I'm much more able to understand how everything works. So this is just essentially going to be the same thing as the column. As the row. It's going to be the same implementation as the row. So we're just going to say rows.map. We're going to say item, or maybe row or something. Index. And we're going to implement our row inside of here. Just like that. We're going to first give it a key so that React doesn't bother us. I'm going to give it a key of index. And then we're going to say ID is equals to index. Yeah, so this is the ID that is going to be used as a prop over here in our tiles. You remember the row ID that I was talking about? So that is the one that is going to be used over here, and you get it from the grid. So as simple as that, we have managed to implement our row, but there's one thing that I want to do is that I just want to create a Tailwind property. I want to have a bit of margin inside of my row. I want my row to have a margin like that. And if we go to our implementation, for some reason, okay, I think I know why. If we go to our app.js, we need to put in our grid. So let's do that. And if we go back, you can see there's our implementation. But what I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to just take out this K that we've implemented over there so that you can see this much more clearly. And if we go to our implementation, there's our grid. There's our grid. Awesome. Cool. So now we go to implementing our keyboard. Shouldn't take us much time. So our keyboard, once again, it also has a few things inside of it. So unlike the grid, we don't need folders for this. We need only 2 properties in there. We need the keys, and then we need the keyboard. So if we go to the keys, you'll notice that there are 2 types of keys in there. There's the bigger keys, or the enter and the backspace key, a little bit much more bigger. So we want to be able to differentiate what type of key we're actually dealing with. So I'm going to use props to do that. And I'm going to say over here at the very top that if a key props prop.big is equals to true. So I know this is not very much intuitive. Just saying props.big, maybe you could use a proper parameter, but I think that's fine. That shows you that that other key, the key that you're talking about, is big. If the key is big, I want you to create this implementation that you have over here. So I'm just gonna copy and paste that implementation and then explain it to you. So nothing difficult over here. We're using CSS grid in order to do this, to place our big keys, and we're giving them certain widths and certain heights so that it could actually stand out from the other keys that we have. So if the key is a big key, then you need to return this implementation that you have over here. So we're giving it our props, we're giving it whether the information about whether or not the key is big, and also giving it the type of letter that that key represents. So now if we come over here, the other part of our if statement. So first of all, we said if the key is big, then I want you to return this implementation. But the other thing is that if the key is not big, then what kind of key should be returned? I'm also going to copy and paste that. It's not a very difficult implementation. I'm just going to take that and paste it in there. That should be fine. So this is a game of CSS. Honestly, it's a CSS game, but the properties are practically the same, except when it comes to the width and the height. That's where the difference is. But other than that, everything else is practically the same. The difference is only in the widths and the height. So there are a couple of functions here that I've implemented that is probably going to give us some errors if we run this code right ahead. So I'm just going to get rid of them for now. I'm going to get rid of these properties, this onClick property for now, and we're going to watch for it, or we're going to do it later. So now we go to the keyboard aspect of this. RFC again, boiler code implemented properly. Go to the keyboard, and what we want now is to create because let's go to our New York Times website. So if you see over here, our keyboard has like 3 rows. You have this QWERTY aspect of our keyboard, and you have this ASD aspect, and the enter, and then the other letters are on this bottom row. So what we really need to do is that we need to create 3 sets of characters, and these 3 sets of characters are going to be divided accordingly. At least that's the most simplest way to do this, is to just create those 3 characters that you can see over there. But you can see that in our sets of characters, we have yet to implement we've yet to put in the enter and the backspace keys. So those ones, we're going to actually implement them separately. So what we want to do is that we want to have 3 sets. So our first set, we're going to create a function for that. We're going to just call it set1 with a bigger letter. The first set, we're going to give it this type of implementation. So we're just going to use map to map those keys, to chain those keys together, and we're going to put them in like a row-like manner. So that's like flex direction is equals to row, and justify content equals to center. So this is not a difficult implementation. So we're just grouping all of those keys under one line, under one row. And we're going to do the same with the rest of the others. It's a pretty much a simple implementation. But wait, first let me just do the second set first before we do the third set, because the third set is a little bit different, because that's where we're implementing our big letters. So now we're going to come over here, and we're going to say function set3. So this one it's going to be a little bit different in that we have a few letters that are inside there that we actually want to implement together with what's already in the set3 array. So you can see that everything else is the same, right? It's the same, but the difference is this one over here. So we are going to hard code our key, our big key that you can see over here. We're going to give it a letter, and also we're going to give it this one. We're going to give it a symbol, because that's an icon. So we're going to give it an icon so that it doesn't show a letter as represented in the keyboard. So it's pretty much the same thing. So after we're done doing that, we're just going to come over here to our main return statement, and we're going to put in those implementations. I'm going to do that for set3 as well. And if we go to our application, let's see what happens. So nothing yet. Let's see if we refresh this. Okay, so we have not seen, oh, okay. Once again, it's pretty much the same problem that we've been experiencing throughout this project. It's because we didn't include the keyboard aspect of this inside of our app.js. I know it would have been much simpler to just put all these elements inside my world board, but I just want to show you step by step how each of these things are implemented. So let's go to our application. So it says that key is not defined, so we need to import key in our keyboard. So let's go to our keyboard and import the key. So we can just do that by just saying, let's say key like this. And if we press enter, we expect that it's going to be imported at the very top. That should solve a problem. And then maybe we have another problem because we have an icon over here that is coming from ent_design. So in order to solve that problem, we're going to have to import ent_design. Don't you just hate it when you have to like stop a project in order to install a library? So I'm just going to say install ent_d, and I'm going to pause the video to allow it to install ent_design. Okay, so I just stopped the installation because I'm realizing I'm not supposed to install ent_design. I'm actually supposed to install ent_design icons. So that is the implementation, the installation line for ent_design icons. So I'm going to install ent_design icons, not ent_design specifically. So I'm going to pause the video and allow it to install and then come back. So we've managed to successfully implement ent_design icons. So what I need to do now is to import that icon at the very top, and that should enable this icon that we've put in over here. And if we go to our application, I'm fingers crossed. Okay, something's wrong here. Okay, so I just needed to refresh the application, and there we have our keyboard that you're seeing over there. All right, so we've managed to implement the graphical aspect of this, but let's just try and combine all these components into this world board that that Wordle board, sorry. I actually put the world board, that's why I'm like, see. So I'm just, instead of world, let me just say board.js. So I'm going to just combine the keyboard and the grid together under one setting so that everything is not too spread apart like that. So first thing I'm going to do, of course, I'm going to put my h1 tag, which is going to represent the logo, and that's going to be Wordle like that. I'm going to give it a few Tailwind Css classes over there. So I'm going to say class name. Ooh, look at that. So I'm going to say class name. I'm going to put in my Tailwind CSS implementation. So this is just simple. I'm just making it a little bit bolder. Yeah, put that ending quote. A little bit bolder. I'm giving it a 5XL font and a margin of 4. So that should do. And also what I want to do is that I want to put in our grid over there. And of course I want to put in my keyboard. Okay, so that's good. We don't need anything else. And I just want to put in a little bit of a disclaimer that if you want to maybe play this game again, maybe you can just like refresh the website. We could create a reset button. I actually want to give it to you as a task. Maybe you could create a reset button because it's very simple to implement. And now we go to our app.js file, and instead of having this individual grid and keyboard components, we can just come over here and put in board. So now it's saying world board because remember, before we changed the file name, we had actually created a component over here. So that is why it's detecting that. So let me just fix that and then come back to our app.js and just put in board over here. It's still saying world board for some reason. But I am going to, that means instead of relying on the magic of importation, I'm going to have to just import it directly. I don't like doing this. So I'm going to just say board from importing things. Actually, it sucks. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to say app.js. And in here, I'm going to put the board. That. So let's just check our board again to make sure that everything is good. And if we go to our Wordle website, you can see, our project, you can see that everything has been implemented correctly. So now we go back to the important aspect of this project, which is the logic aspect of this project. So, so yeah, let's first start on the board, I believe. yeah, let's start with the board. So what we need, actually, let's go to app.js, because we need a use context. We're going to use use context in order to create this. So we need to create that context on our app.js. So I'm just going to come here and I'm going to say export const Wordle context, create context. If you don't know much about use context, it's similar to use state, but instead of having one state in that state can be shared across multiple components that are underneath that component. So that is how it works, but I will probably leave a link of how use context works. It's a very simple aspect of React.js, and it helps you just share your state or even your functions across your components much more easily. So the first thing that we need is, of course, we need our word, and we're just going to put that word in a use state. So I'm going to just say use state like that, and I'm going to put the word games inside of there. And then after that, we're going to capture our guess word. So we're going to say guess word and set guess word. Right. Set guess word is equals to use state. I don't know what you're going to guess, so I'm just going to put some codes in there. And so another thing that we're going to put in an array of completed rows, or rows that have been completed. So for example, if we go back to the New York Times website, we just tried guessing a word over here. So that means this row has been done away with. So we want to be able to have a way to capture the current row that we are working with. So in this situation, row 1 has been done with, or has been completed with. What is actually active now is the second row. And after we guess that one, then what's going to happen is that row 2 is going to be done away with, and now we're dealing with the third row. So if we were to play around with that, you will notice that now we're dealing with the third row. So we want to find a way to capture what is the current row and what are the rows that have been completed. So in order to do that, of course, we need a state. So we're going to just name the first state completed rows. I'm going to say set completed rows. I think I'm just going to take those states. So we have completed rows, and then we have current row. And so what current row is going to help us is going to help us identify which row is currently being used to maybe guess the word and all that kind of stuff. And then inside of our app.js, we have a couple of functions. I actually think 3 functions. So the first function, we're going to call it guess the word. So maybe and the argument is going to be a character. Remember, every time somebody presses a certain character on the keyboard, then that character is captured. Every time somebody presses a certain key or a certain character in the keyboard, that character is being captured. And after it's being captured, we go to the guess word that you have already guessed thus far, and we check if that word is complete. So in order to do that, we're going to say length equal 5. If it is complete, then what we need to do is that we need to return. And we need to set the guess word. Else we need to set the guess word, because there's no need for us to continue with the game. If you have already completed, you just need to press enter. So the reason why in explaining this if statement over here, there's a closing if statement. I believe it's called a closer, I'm not pretty sure. So actually it's called a guard statement. So it's a guard if statement. So the reason why we are returning is because we don't want somebody to enter in more than 5 letters. So if you're guessing a word and you have, maybe you're saying lousy. So this is a 5-letter word, a word with 5 characters. We don't want a situation whereby you are able to enter another character after inputting all these 5 characters. So that is why we're putting in this return statement that we have over here. So if you have less than 5 words, then I guess maybe we can say if it's greater than 5, but honestly I don't feel like it's going to be more than that, because yeah, I think equal is fine. The reason why is because we're not going to allow you to go anywhere once your word has 5 characters. So we're just going to say guess word.concat. We're going to concatenate that character that you just selected. Concat guessword.concat.character. So we're going to just combine them all together to form a single word. And then that's just it. And then the next thing that we're going to do is that we're going to implement the enter functionality. So we're just going to say, so this will be the function that will be called once the user presses enter. So inside of here, what we're going to do is that we're going to check if the guess word is less than 5. And if it's less than 5, then the enter will not work. So we're just going to just return nothing. And the other thing actually that I forgot to explain to you is that we need to have a dictionary, because what Wordle does, if you go to the New York Times website, it checks. So let's say this word over here, it's going to check if that word is contained in a dictionary. So if the word is not contained, then you can see, because of this vibrating thing over here, that the word is not found in the list. So what we're going to do is we're going to implement a dictionary, So we're going to come here to components, and we're going to just say, what can we do? Yes, we're going to create a file called variables, and then we're going to create export const dictionary. So this is going to be a dictionary of all the words that are, I guess, inside of the dictionary, in the Wordle dictionary actually. So I'm just going to do that. Yes. So now this is all the lists of words in the English dictionary, I think. So some of these words over here, I swear I've never heard of, but apparently those are the words. And actually, if you Google some of these words, because I've Googled them, you can actually find out that they're actual real words. All right. So now that we have our dictionary here, we've exported it. That means we have access to it. We go back to our app.js. So once the user presses enter, what we want to happen is that we want to have the ability to check if that word is contained inside of the dictionary. So I'm going to just say if the word is not contained. So if dictionary dot includes the guess word, and we want to turn that word to lowercase, because you can see that all the words that we have in the dictionary were in lowercase. If the word is not found in the dictionary, then what should happen? We should be able to alert the user that the word is not found, word not found in the dictionary. All right, that's cool. And so the other thing that we need to do is that we need to check if the user has guessed correctly. So if guess word is equals to word, then maybe we can alert them and say, congratulations. Congratulations, you've guessed right. Put in some extra exclamation mark for dramatic effect. And then inside of this press enter, we need to implement the else statement. So if the user, maybe let's say, gives in, it does not satisfy either of these if statements, then what we need to do is that, so in essence, if the user does provide a word that is found in the dictionary and a word that has 5 letters, and the word is not the correct word, then we need to go to the next row. And then how we go to the next row is we need to say set current row is equals, we need to set it +1, like that. So it's as simple as that. And after that, we need to say set completed rows, and we need to include that new row, completed rows, with the current row. So current row, like that. Excellent. And then we need to now set the guess word to nothing. Oh, I thought we had implemented, because I've been using the guess word, but so we have not implemented the guess word state. So we need to do that. At the very top, I thought we had implemented it. So yeah, that's about it. And then the last function that we're going to implement is the backspace function. So we're just going to say function backspace, like that. And what it simply does is that it uses the slice method to just backspace the guess word. So it's as simple as that. We've already created the use context. We've already created the context. So what we need to do is that we need to pass everything that we have over here into our context provider. So in order to do that, of course, I'm going to just say get rid of that div, and I'm going to say Wordle context, sorry, dot provider. I'm also going to implement it over here, Wordle context dot provider. Get rid of the class name, and then I'm going to say value. And now I'm going to implement or create all. Is it all or some? Yeah, I think all or some of those functions and variables inside of our value context. Yeah, pretty much all of them, because we're going to be sharing all of them with the rest of the components. Cool. All right. So I do think some of these ones could be. No, I don't think so, honestly, because I was thinking some of these functions can be implemented directly on the components, but I don't think so, because now we're dealing. It's much easier to implement them here because our state is here. So it'll be a totally different thing now to implement these functions on a different component while our state resides somewhere else. I'm not saying it's not implementable, but I would prefer much to implement it this way, to have our functions over here and then share them with the rest of the components. Okay, now the first thing I'm going to do, we're going to go to our board, and we're going to go to our, I believe our grid is fine, doesn't need anything. What is important here is our tile. I think our grid is fine. We need to work on our tile. And the reason why we need to work on our tile is because our tile is the one that is going to be taking in the letters. So we come over here, and we're going to import a couple of things. Alright, so we're going to need a couple of things from the context. So these couple of things is the guess word, the word, the current row, completed rows, all of those things, we're going to need them. And the reason why we're going to need them is that we want to be able to change the colors of the tile. So we're going to implement a method over here, and we're going to call it change colors. And this method just simply checks if the letter that is contained in that tile is in the right placement. That means, does it or does it not coincide with the letter, with the index of the letter that is the original? I feel like I'm talking gibberish a bit, right? So let's say, for example, we're creating a word called games. So I'm going to use this as partition, right? So let's say our word to guess is games, right? So what we're trying to check is that, let's say we put G on the first tile of the row. So we're going to check if G coincide with that word in terms of like the index. So does tile 1 contain the letter that is contained in the first character of that word? So if, for example, we put the word G over here, we're going to check in the word if the tile ID coincides with the array, with the word ID, or the position of that character in the word. So I hope that that is a bit understandable enough. So the first thing that we do is we split up our word into an array so that we can be able to access it individually. And then what we do then is we check if that letter is actually included inside of that, inside of our word. So we check if maybe if we put in K, we check if K is inside our word. If it is not inside of our word, then immediately that means that we're going to turn the color of our cell, this background, into gray, and the font is going to be white appropriately. So this is what is going to be implemented right over here. So the background is going to be white, and the font is going to the background is going to be gray, and the font is going to be white, like you see over here. And then we're going to check if the array ID, so that means if the word that is found at a certain position that is similar to the tile ID is actually the letter. So in here, if we have the word games, we're going to check, and if this is our 0th tile, we're going to check if tile 0 contains the same character as array word at position 0. So if it does contain, if that condition stands, then that would certainly mean that you have placed that character at the exact spot that it needs to be. So we're trying to check if you have placed a certain character at the exact spot that it needs to be. So if you've placed it accordingly, if you've placed it the right way, then that means the background is going to be light green and the font is going to be white. Other than that, if you have correctly guessed the word, the character that is inside the word, if you have correctly guessed it, but you have not placed it in the correct position, that means the background is going to be gold and the font is going to be white. So I hope you understand how this function works. You're trying to check if you've placed that character in the correct index or the correct position inside of that word that is to be guessed. If you have correctly placed the character inside of the at the right position, then you're going to be given a green background. If you have not, you're given a gold background. If you have not, but the letter is actually inside of the word, so you're going to be given a gold background. And then if you have not placed the correct character at the correct position, and then on top of that, that character is not in the word to be guessed, then the background is going to be changed to gray. So yeah, I think that's about it. I think that explanation is enough. If it's not enough, then let me know. I'll explain it much better in the comment section. Maybe I'll write a Medium article about this. So now what we need to do is that we need to implement use effect, so that each time you click, each time a guess word, each time the guess word is extended, then this function runs. But we're going to give it certain condition when or where it's going to run. So we're just going to use our use effect, and I'm going to copy in our use effect over here, and I'm going to explain it to you how it works. So our use effect, what we're trying to do here is that if the current row is equals to the current ID, so we want to make sure that we are not dealing with a row that has already been completed. We're dealing with the current row. So if the current row is equals to the row ID, then I need you to set the letter of that tile to a particular character. So it needs to coincide with the character that is inside of the guess word. So if there's no character, then it remains blank. And then our second if statement simply says that if that row has been completed, or if the user has pressed enter, so that is the actual time where we're going to be changing the colors. And then after that, we're going to set our completed to false. So once the user presses enter, so this if statement just simply means that if the user presses enter, then we're going to implement that change colors thing method that you see over there. Right. So that is, I think, about it for our tile. And then the next thing that we need to deal with is the keys. And remember, we had implemented those on-click buttons. We had commented them out, sorry. So we need to go to the keys and then comment them in again. Because the reason why we're trying to comment them, because we want to actually make sure that each of them does exactly what it has been instructed to do. So over here, we're just going to create a function, and we're going to call it handle click for big. And then we're going to say if props letter is equals to enter, then what I want you to do is that I want you to actually implement the press enter function. But before we actually implement that function, or we put that function in this if statement, then we need to retrieve that function from the use context. So make sure you come over here and then use context. There we go. And then we need that Wordle context import as well. Oh, there you go. And now we've managed to retrieve that press enter value. So what we need to do now is we need to say if the props.letter is equals to enter, then I just need you to simply run that press enter method. Else, I need you to backspace. So now we take this function over here and we implement it on this on-click attribute. And then yeah, that's about it. But we're not done yet. We want to make sure that every time something is clicked, or a letter is clicked, that the user is able to, we run that guess the word item. So that means every time you click an alphabet or you click one of those characters, then the guess the word function is going to be ren, and we're going to feed it that particular character. So yeah, I think that is practically about it. I don't think there's anything else that we need to do apart from that. Let's go back to our project. Let's make sure everything works as, oh man, there's a lot of problems. Let's just refresh this and see, okay. Okay, so I can see that this is all coming from our tile.js file. And I think the reason why this is because we didn't import some of those things inside of there. And so that is probably why it's complaining. First, we didn't import use context, and then we didn't import Wordle context, and then we didn't import, what else did we not import? I hope we've imported use state. Yeah, I think that's practically about it. That's what we needed to implement. So we just need that Wordle context. Let's see if it complains even more. And we, okay, so there's a row ID. So that means this is going to come from the props. So that is why. So we just come over here. And I say ID, row ID. Like that. Back to my project. What more do you want, project? Set color. So I said set colors instead of set color. And I think that is about it. And our header is not to the center, so we need to implement that properly. Go to our board. And what we need to do is we need to go over here to the diff statement, I want to believe. And we can just implement some Tailwind Css classes in there. So we're just going to say flex. Just make sure everything is at the center. Flex call. And everything is in a column-like manner. And we want to say justify center and items center. Okay, so hopefully this works. You can see that everything is now properly on the center. So I think now we can try to play the game. So if we were to maybe, okay, so let's see, first let's see what is our word. Let's see what the word is. What's the word on the street? Okay, the word is games. So now, if we come over here, we can just use the keyboard for now. I'm going to task you with the responsibility of actually using your own keyboard to enter those particular characters. So I'm going to just say great. Okay, and if we go to the top, we can see that nothing is happening. So obviously that means something is wrong, because when we click this, it's supposed to function correctly. And if you just go over to the console, you'll notice that it says guess the word .concat is not a function. So I think that is our problem over there. So let's just try and figure out why that is happening. Okay. So we have, oh actually, so this is supposed to be actually guess word .concat, not guess the word .concat. So now let's see what happens if we try to press in. Unfortunately, this is a very small screen that I'm typing with, and so that is the reason why. Let's see if we, oh, there we go. And if I'm going to just type in great. Alright, so you can see if I try to press more letters, nothing is happening. It's just going to stop at T. I can backspace. Let me press backspace and see what happens. Let me try. Did I press it? Okay, press it harder. Okay, so backspace doesn't seem to be working exactly how I want it to work. So once again, go to the console. It says cannot assign to read-only property letter of object. So that's key 10. So this is where our problem is. So that means we haven't, this is an equal assignment operator that we have not implemented correctly. So I try not to avoid the errors. I try not to edit out the errors so that you can just see what is involved in coding, that everybody makes these silly mistakes, even me myself. So I tried not to edit out the errors in my video so that you can see when I make mistakes. So now let's try it again. And then we're going to type in great. Alright, and then I'm going to try to backspace. There we go. And I'm going to say Greek. No, I'm going to say Greeks. I'm going to put X at the end. I'm going to show you what happens if I try to press enter. It should tell me that this word is actually not found in the dictionary. So there's a problem with that as well. Okay. So for some reason, my enter is not entering. So let's try to see where the problem is with that. So if I go to my code, I'm seeing that on the press enter, I've tried a console log here so I can really identify the error. And I'm seeing that the problem most of the time is because I have often been mistaking guess the word, the function, with guess word. So that is where my problem has been. So I'm going to try and do this much properly. I wonder if there's some way where I've did that as well, where it's going to impact my code. As you can see, guess word. It was supposed to be guess word. So I think that is it goes to how you name your functions. Make sure that you name your functions. Your functions and your variables are a little bit different from each other, so that you don't mistake them for the other. So I hope this time it works. Let's try to refresh again. I'm going to try great. And now I'm actually going to backspace and put an X at the end. So I'm expecting for it to tell me that the word is not found in the dictionary, and it does. It's perfect. So, and if I backspace this, and then I put in a T, then what should happen is that if I press enter, then it should be able to implement those colors, and it doesn't. So let's try to figure out why that is happening. Nothing on the console. So for some reason our colors are not changing, and honestly I think maybe if we go to our tile we can see probably what the solution to the problem could be. Our change colors is implemented correctly, our use effect is fine, and try to console log this, and one of the things that I'm seeing as a problem is that this use effect keeps running many times because we have many tiles. So implementation, try to avoid that. I think one use effect is enough. So I think maybe the problem could be here, over here, if we get rid of these curly brackets over here. And you'll notice that I think it will work. Let's see if we refresh it. Oh, there it is. So if we were to type great, and then we would press enter. Now you can't see enter in your screen, but I am pressing enter, and you could see that it is implementing the correct way that we want it to implement. So now let's try and implement something that is totally different. Let me say tuta. Is that 5 letters? I think so. By the way, I have a tutoring class. If you're interested in me teaching how to code, if you're a beginner, or you've just started with web design or web development, I'm the right person to do it for you. Please make sure that you check my details on the description box, shoot me an email, and we'll get started with that. So if I press enter over here, I'm expecting all the boxes to be in gray, the background. But if we were to implement the right word, we were to say games, and we were to press enter, you can see that we get the message that says, congratulations, you've managed to get it. So that is practically it. That is our Wordle game. I think it took us 1 hour, 10 minutes to create, but I think you can see exactly how that game would be implemented. We ran into a couple of errors, but we managed to solve most of them. Now, I'm not saying this is the pristine way to do this game, but I think this is a starting ground because there are many things that we can implement, such as the animations. We can use frame of motion. Perhaps I'll do another video where I use frame of motion to implement that animation feature, and we can also do make sure that the colors, the background colors of the keywords are also of the keys are also changing and are also animated at that. So that is basically it for our Wordle game using React.js and Tailwind CSS. I am going to put the repository on the description box. I hope I don't forget. So if I haven't put it in, please just comment and say you forgot to put the description, you forgot to put the source code, and I will do so. So once again, thank you very much for watching. Please make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Please make sure that you like this video if you've enjoyed it, and make sure that you leave a comment in the comment section if you've enjoyed it, or if you didn't enjoy it, that will still be fine. So other than that, if you've subscribed, thank you very much once again for watching. I will see you next time on